Let's take a moment and reflect to how lucky we are to be at Holden Beach and think of everyone. All right, thank you very much. We'll officially call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, and it's gonna be a happy day when we get everybody back in here. And let's do our pledge of allegiance to our flag. Am I right? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn our attention to item number 4 on our agenda, consideration of approving the agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Brown, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Number 5, consideration of approving the minutes for September 3, September 15, September 18. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Number 6, public comments. Madam Clerk, you got any?
No, sir, no comments today.
All right. Number 7, annual beach monitoring report. Ms. Ferguson?
Yes, sir, good evening. Every year, the town does surveys and participates in annual beach monitoring as a way to maintain a healthy beach and dune system. And Applied Technology and Management, Fran Way, does a report for us. That report is a baseline that we give to FEMA if we do have a storm, to serve as our where we are as far as losses. They can calculate losses that occurred based on what we've done with our surveys, and Mr. Way is here tonight to present the data from this year.
How many years you been our engineer?
About 12 now. So back to the truck hauls of 2008, 2009, and that we had so much fun with the sand that was marginally brown sometimes.
It's kind of like your hair. It was marginally
Yeah.
brown, now it's marginally gray.
Yes.
Look, David's laughing, but his was brown.
So I'm here to just update the board on the annual beach monitoring. Here's where the transects are. The beach, we do take some transects over on Oak Island, kind of because Lockwood Folly Inlet is, has influence areas on both sides of it. And actually, and we just took a few new transects over here on Shallotte that we're going to take from now on, just to keep an eye out on Shallotte a little bit as well. Can you go to the next one, Heather, please? Thanks. Our annual monitoring analysis, we're going to do volume. We do volume change, we do shoreline change, so volume and just shoreline change. And we look back to about 2001. 2001 was basically when the beach nourishment activity really kind of stepped up, and that was when the Wilmington Harbor deepening occurred, and they put about 525,000 cubic yards of material on the beach. So it was the first major nourishment on Holden Beach, even though, there have been small nourishments back into back to Hurricane Hazel. We do it for nourishment and for planning and for FEMA. And then just to recall, these photos are from the 80s and 90s on the East End, where, just back in the 90s, there were anywhere between 30 and 40 houses got, taken off the beach. It was the erosion was pretty bad. And the beach it's much healthier now. For the hurricane season, our annual monitoring kind of includes the last hurricane season, and since Isaias was so early in the hurricane season this year, we got to include that as well. Dorian went by, and Dorian, obviously, when we have to do our calculation losses for FEMA, we have to, do the entire beach, but we basically concentrate on the quote-unquote engineered beach, and that's where FEMA really does kind of give us some benefit, where if we can, they kind of encourage, engineered beaches, because that does protect upland infrastructure. For Dorian, we calculated about 550,000 cubic yards of material lost. Isaias was actually only about 67,000 cubic yards. So even though Isaias really did impact the beach more from a volume-wise, and kind of looking out in the near shore, a quarter mile offshore, 100 yards offshore, it really wasn't as bad at all than Dorian from the beach health point of view. We can go to the next one. So our volume analysis, just what I was talking about, this is just our standard kind of, we look at kind of the dune and the upper beach, and here's the intertidal, the mean high water, mean low water. And then you go out, and this is only about a quarter mile out. You get down to like 10 or 20 feet. Most of our analysis is from the 12-foot contour line, negative 12-foot mean sea level up. So we kind of do this whole area. This is kind of where we concentrate on. But FEMA does actually make us go out to the negative 20, down to the negative 20, so we have to go out all the way out here. And that can almost be like a half mile offshore. And we have seen that prior to Hurricane Matthew and the Central Reach project in 2017, we did see that most of the sand was moving shallower than that 12-foot contour. But now we do see actually some more movement out here between 12 feet and 20 feet. It's been kind of interesting. It's not just eroding. There's sand moving out there and moving back. It just seems like maybe a little more dynamic. And we're not really sure. We do think it's the influx of material that got put in, but we also think that there have been some Hurricane Matthew and some other storms that have been pretty energetic. That the bigger the storm, the farther offshore they'll touch the bottom. So for our volume change, the beach lost volume over the last year, where it lost. This is kind of the zero line. Here's the accretion. Here's erosion. Basically, the east end gained because there was that Lockwood Folly Inlet nourishment. And we calculated about 80,000 cubic yards of material we could account for in the near shore. And I was just out there, and that east end does look pretty good relative to what it was, 10 years ago. But the entire beach is losing volume. And here the west end, the beach is nice and wide there, but it does seem to be the west end is kind of, we're seeing a little bit more erosion there, where it was accretional before. Now it's more stable to kind of erosional. There's a lot more buffer, and there's a lot more sand dune out there, but we're still kind of watching the west end. And our next upcoming nourishment, we're stretching a little farther west to try to get that footprint in there a little bit more. Can you just scroll down a teeny bit? Okay. So the Central Reach over the last year, we calculated the Central Reach lost about 430,000 cubic yards. So we put about 1.3 million, and just last year it lost, about a third of the sand. But that's kind of not the whole picture, where we have seen some noise and some better years. So actually some years where we had some accretion. But overall, there's been some erosion, and we have a nourishment coming up. The beach still looks pretty good, though. Can you go to the next one, please?
Hey, Frank, can I ask you
Yeah.
a quick question?
Mhm,
I don't
sure.
mean to be picky, I'm just looking at your chart
Yeah.
here. On the dry beach,
Yes.
Heather, can you go back one? Oh, there. On the dry beach area at the bottom, or that dry beach column
Yes.
at the bottom,
Yes.
you got a positive 34,000.
Yes.
which added to 397 need to be negative to get the 430.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're just missing a sign, it's not, or.
Yeah, no, that's, I was reading that one, but that is actually, this is the total over here, so it is three, you read the table correctly.
Okay,
So basically, we looked at, you know, from the dune out to the surf zone, and actually, you can see that the beach basically stayed about the same. But then, from the surf zone out to about negative 12 feet, that's where you saw a little bit more loss, but when you go, include it all, you're around 400,000.
okay.
So, yeah, that's it. And then, if you go to the next slide really quick, and then scroll down just a little bit, Heather. This is the central reach volumes since 2017, where basically we had about 1.3 million cubic yards accounted for, and then here's our change over time. Basically, the following year, the beach gained 200, the central reach beach gained 230,000 cubic yards. We actually don't even know where that came from because there wasn't a nourishment at that time, but maybe that some of that sand from Lockwood Poly Inlet nourishment kind of came in. The following year, the central reach lost about 142,000. So we got knocked down, and then last year we lost about 400,000. But if you look between 2020, we've got 1 million yards of sand. So we only lost about, you know, the Central Reach project looks really good if we look at this metric here, where we put, you know, almost 1.4 million cubic yards of sand, and we can still account for about 1 million cubic yards of sand. So, you know, there are other, obviously with Florence and Michael, we're looking at, you know, 1.1 million cubic yards. We're basically looking at another Central Reach project, the project we're planning right now, and that will be all FEMA mitigation funded. Up here we have the overall mean high water erosion over the last year, and you can see the erosion that it eroded, you know, anywhere, usually around 30 feet, which is pretty big right here. But then actually over here, on the west end, it was kind of stable, the mean high water line. And then obviously you see that accretion on the east end where the nourishment happened, where you can see up to, you know, 80 feet of beach accretion because of that nourishment. Okay, next slide. So basically for the last 20 years, the beach is much healthier than it was. We can see here the blue basically is showing, and up here at this table, we can see where basically the historical mean high water changed between the 2000 mean high water line and the 2020 mean high water line. It's, you know, over 100 feet. It's 100 to 150 feet wider than it was back then 20 years ago. The entire beach. And then, but actually you just see the west area is almost about zero, negative 1.2. So over 20 years, the west area has been like really stable, but we really have seen gains everywhere else. So that is why we're kind of just keeping an eye out here on the west end. But the beach is doing well, and the town's nourishment system is kind of keeping up with erosion and with these hurricanes. And I think that's it. Oh, no, this is the last one. Our ongoing beach management activities, we submitted the permit application for the next major nourishment. It's going to be up to 1.5 million cubic yards. We want to get at least 1.1 million cubic yards of material out there. We do think we found enough to put at least 1.1 million out, and we're hoping to get more like 1.5 million. And that's the Florence and Michael mitigation, and we're thinking we might be able to put Group Dorian in there as well. And we're not sure about Isaias at the moment. Then obviously the Lockwood Poly Inlet crossing and the bend widener, we're continuing to follow that. There is supposed to be, I didn't see it, the Army Corps of Engineers said they are going to put out the project for bid here this month. I have to check to see if it's out yet. And then the Lockwood Poly, the outer channel navigation, where you know, just continuing to follow that, and just the discussion on trying to pull the buoys, excuse me. And then can you scroll down a little bit more, Heather? And then this is just an image of kind of the offshore. This is a lot of this is Army Corps of Engineer data from offshore. This is that's the old Central Reach project, right, there's Lockwood Folly Inlet. This is the bar area that we're using, that we just put in for. So this area and that area is where we want to use for the upcoming nourishment. We looked over here a little bit more, and then this is all from 20 years ago when the Corps did some studies. And this is that 3 nautical mile line where when you go beyond that, that's BOEM territory. And we've kind of been avoiding BOEM territory because that's just another layer of regulatory oversight. So we'd have the Corps, CAMA, and then all of a sudden we have BOEM. And so we staying in the state waters. We like that, but in the future, trying to find sand offshore here, it's difficult. There's not a whole lot of easy sand. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit. So we might have to go off into BOEM territory, and other, Carteret County's done it. A few have done it. And it does seem like BOEM has kind of streamlined a little bit, but it's still another layer of kind of regulatory red tape that we've been trying to avoid, but we might not be able to avoid it here in the future. But so that's where we are. Any questions?
I have a question. The west end, between Monk Island and the extreme west end of the island, the old cut-through marsh, slough, whatever you want to call it, what separated Monk Island from Holden Beach, is reopening. I was down there
Okay.
about a week or so ago, and there's actually water flowing back and forth. Dave and I have been talking about it and watching it. Do you have any feel about what's about to happen or how that is impacting the west end, that erosion there? And I know in looking across at Ocean Isle Beach, Ocean Isle keeps, it appears to me, migrating eastward toward Holden Beach as those shoals keep moving easterly. You got any thoughts about all that's going on?
Yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure. It does usually take a lot of energy to kind of open an inlet kind of permanently versus, having a washout and then having to heal itself. But we've also noted this is the same thing where there's kind of a long-term migration of the shorelines over there. And that is kind of one of the reasons why we, we're doing some of those extra surveys over that way to really kind of quantitatively look at what is going on.
The other thing that's heavily on my mind is it appears to me that the channel for that inlet where the boats go and come
Sure.
is getting closer to us and further away from Ocean Isle. We all can remember, it hasn't been that long ago that Ocean Isle did a major borrowing event right there in that inlet. And it's been a long time since I remembered that the boat channel is as far east as it is there. I don't know if that's going to continue and how that's going to impact us. But anyway.
Yeah, sure. We'll keep an eye on that because in 2001 or 2002, they took about 1.8 million cubic yards of material from that area, which is a huge amount of material. And there were some detrimental effects to Holden Beach shoreline at that point. And so now they're only taking about 600,000 every 4 or 5 years. But we definitely we're keeping an eye whenever they put out a permit application or something where we definitely want to make sure that they stay a significant distance away from the shoreline, the Holden Beach shoreline.
And one last thing on Holden Beach West, the lake, the infamous oceanfront
Yes.
lake down
Mhm.
there. It's not unusual to see water going north and south to and from the ocean from that lake back and forth. You got any thoughts on that, how that's going to impact?
We think all this nourishment material will head that way, and we actually did see some of that. But when you look at the overall picture, you don't see as much. But we do think all these nourishment projects that sand will end up down on the west end here, in a few years. So, yeah, we're just kind of keeping an eye on it, you know, that little habitat area. Yeah, it's just from inlet to inlet, I would love to kind of get the dune higher and more robust. And that's in our design for Central Reach, we want to really do that, where we get a big fat dune in our design to really kind of give them a head start. But yeah, because you know, just kind of looking at the beach, it does seem like the dune system's nice and wide, but it's not high. And so we're going to try to work on that. But on the west end, trying to kind of increase that height is going to be difficult.
It hasn't been that many years ago that frontal dune, not the primary dune, but the frontal dunes down
Okay.
in Holden Beach West didn't exist. And it seems like Mother Nature is starting to nibble on them, especially on the very southwest point there. In some cases, there's no dune line at all out there where it was 2 years ago. So I know you're aware of all that, but those that may be listening need to know that the town's aware of it as well, so.
Sure, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the west end, I mean, yeah, it's a lot less traveled and from, you know, and I was out there a few months ago, but even today when I went out and I got to like the pier in the east end, but I didn't have time to go to the west end.
Any questions from anybody?
Yes. Fran, just to try to put this in layman's terms so I understand it, as far as the Central Reach is concerned, when we did the Central Reach project 4 years ago, we put roughly 1.3 million cubic yards of sand on the beach. And on average, how far did that extend the beach at that point?
You know, 100 to 125 feet.
Okay. And since that, the end of the Central Reach project, we lost roughly 20 to 25% of the sand.
Yes,
in that
volume-wise,
In that
yes.
4-year period. And I know it varies from one point to
Yes.
another, but on average, how much of that 120 feet did we lose?
In terms of, probably about half of it, conservatively. So maybe, you know, there's 50 to 60 feet left.
Okay. Now, we have in the permits for Flo and Mike and Dorian, and we could have another 1.5 million cubic yards, if I'm
Yes,
correct.
almost the exact same, basically.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is from where we are today, we're gonna put the same amount of sand on the beach, but we're gonna start from either 50, 60, or 70 feet further out.
Yes, correct.
So
So-
just, that's, I think I understand it that way better than looking at all the numbers and the
sure.
variances. And the people who are listening would probably understand it better as well.
Yes,
We're in a heck of a lot better shape now than we were 4 years ago. And when we finish the project, we're gonna be in even better shape than we were at the end of the Central Reach
Yes.
project.
yes.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else have questions? You do a great job for us.
Thank
Staff,
you.
you got any questions? Thank you, Fran.
Thanks.
All right, moving along to the next item on the agenda. Health benefits, Mr. Sullivan?
That's mine, yeah. As I stated at the last board meeting, back over a year or so ago, we had the classification and pay study done. The recommendations in that study had to do with salary as well as fringe benefits. And we incorporated a lot of the recommendations and findings of the study having to do with wages and parts of the fringe benefit package. The one thing we did not address was the town's payment and the insurance coverage, health insurance coverage for the employees and their dependents. So at the last meeting, excuse me, I asked the town clerk if she could prepare a little graph for us showing what the different costs are to the town for the different coverages. And I'd like to thank Heather. It's just simple, and she did it for us, and I appreciate it. And the reason I wanted to look at that is, if you look at the study that we had done, most of the towns we're in line with when it comes to the health insurance for the employee. But when it comes to the health insurance for the family coverage, we afford much more of a benefit to our employees. So the question is, do we want to continue to do that? Or do we want to make an adjustment to the fringe benefit having to do with medical benefits for our employees? And it's just something that I think should be discussed, decided upon, so that we can close that loop as a result of the study that was conducted.
Comments from anybody? Questions? Discussion of any kind?
Well, I'll make it simple. We have the report in front of us. I think what we should do is look at it and put this on the calendar for next month, so we can vote on whether to leave the benefits as they are or to revise the benefits in some way.
I'll second that.
That's a motion? Or you want,
I don't think I need a motion to put on the calendar.
well, I had a second.
Yeah.
I assumed it was sort of a motion, so,
Yeah.
but okay, I
Okay.
agree with what Mike's proposing.
Okay. All right, so consensus is, how about that? Is that what that consensus is, that we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting? All right? Mr. Hewitt,
Yes, sir.
number 9, disaster debris in gated communities.
At the last board meeting, we had proposed developing a policy that would attempt to modify or put forth the town's position that picking up disaster debris in gated communities was not, that we were against the FEMA policy that doesn't provide for reimbursement of expenses in gated communities. That's what this resolution, we carved it out, attempts to do. The second resolution that I was charged to come back with was to go ahead and develop a policy for the town that we would pick it up regardless of whether or not there were reimbursements for gated communities. I'm gonna need to walk around that one a bit more before I bring it back to the board. So what I've got in front of you tonight is basically a resolution that allows us to engage on a number of different levels in an attempt to change that FEMA policy. In other words, we want FEMA to reimburse for disaster debris-related pickup expenses in gated communities.
That was my understanding of consensus of the board. Is that where we are? Yes, sir?
Then you should,
So I make a motion that we approve the resolution 20-10.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any more discussion?
Yes, on the last whereas, I would actually propose that we also work economics in, because when I look at FEMA information, they do talk about threats to life, public health, or safety, or to the economic recovery of the community at large. So I would actually think that we might like to put everything in that they talk about into that one line where, you know, is a fundamental life safety, public health, and economic recovery issue.
Anybody have a problem with that? Mr. Hewitt, could we add that?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion we approve this with the amendment?
Make a motion that we approve it as amended.
Second. Motion made and second, approve as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimously approved, and thank you. Mr. Clemens, I don't see his.
Mr. Clemens had to take a knee this afternoon. I've got him.
You
I'll
got
take
it?
this item.
All right.
At the goals workshop in the development of this year's budget, the board specifically requested that we develop a fire hydrant replacement policy. That's what this resolution does. It establishes a target, if you will, of doing, of funding and repairing 10 fire hydrants a year. They're $2,000 apiece is what we estimate. This year's budget has enough money in it to do 5. What this resolution does is it modifies our capital improvement plan and says we'll do 10 a year, $20,000 apiece, and directs me to put that in the capital improvement plan.
You know how many we got on the island?
There are 150 fire hydrants. Yeah.
So it'll take you 15 years.
Well, I mean, you got to pick a number, and based on the interface with the fire department, there might not be 10 a year that we need to fix. That's included, for your information, is the schedule that they help us with, and they actually conduct testing on.
Those are the ones that are in the worst shape. In other words, here's what we need, the ones we need to change first.
That's right.
I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Brown, maybe.
Oh, Murdoch, something.
David, excuse me, I brought that up, and I talked with Chris about that, and it was actually something that I put on there. There are more than 10, currently that need some attention. How do we prioritize? Like, is 10 all we're gonna do? If
We're only
there's
gonna do 5 between now and the 30th of June.
Right.
And what this does is it says that every year we're gonna look at 10 as the target. Y'all will control that by putting it in the budget. If it's 12 and we need to fix 12 that year, you'll take 12 down in the budget every year. But this is basically bubble budgeting. So we're gonna take 10 down a year. If it's 15, we'll have to put that in the year and modify it every year.
I just wanna make sure if 12 need done right now, that we need to be provided with that information, because I don't wanna
Okay.
shortchange a fire hydrant being operational. But I'm all for this for sure.
All right. Mr. Brown, you made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Again, it's approved. Number 11, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. What this resolution does is it allows us to reimburse ourselves for expenses that we will incur for the improvement of lift stations 3 and 4. And also the potential reimbursement of expenses associated with the second water tower. So instead of having those expenses be lost, for example, our engineering expenses that we would incur, our sunk cost in the current ongoing Lift Station 3 upgrade, we'll be able to claw back the hard dollar cost in the facility of up to 60 days. We can get all the engineering back on it. Instead of paying that money out as a pay-go, this anticipates financing the large portion of the expenses for Lift Station 3 and then Lift Station 2 also. Did I say 4? But Lift Station 3 and Lift Station 2. So if you want to finance and those packages, this is just a reimbursement resolution. This is not the finance package that you will have to approve in order to go to the local government commission and borrow money from the bank. This is just saying that you will reimburse yourself for the cash expenses that you've already laid out.
It's a housekeeping.
Yes.
Is there,
Well, it's a lot of money that we will be able to finance instead of having paid out, on a cash basis, especially for Lift Station 3.
I do have one question, and in fact, it's the way you actually said it, where you talked about for the lift stations and the potential for a second water tower. Would it be better in the first whereas to put potential acquisition and installation of a water tower instead of, you've stated it as an absolute?
Well, you haven't entered into a contract for Lift Station 2 upgrade yet either, and neither have you performed the engineering services for Lift Station 2. So in my opinion, that would be just as subject to the board's discretion on not doing Lift Station 2 as it could. And the water tower is in your capital improvement plan. It's in there. And that water tower plus the lift station upgrades are going to be pieces that go into the Raftielis fee development fee analysis. So again, I'll stress that just by adopting this resolution to reimburse does not mean that you're going to finance those 3 facilities.
anybody want to make a motion?
I move we adopt the resolution 20-12 as written.
Looking for a second. Second. All righty, any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Mr. Evans, number 12, land use plan.
Yes, this is, actually, I think this may be the beginning of the end. We first had this on the agenda back in March. I know that when we first started this document, as funny as it may seem, I believe Moby Dick was a minnow. We've worked on this for years. There's lots of credits in the front of it, but the land use plan is very important, possibly one of the most important documents the town will entertain in the next couple of years. It will be your driving document for all of our new development and will actually ensure that the folks who choose to come here in the future will be coming to one of the best places they could possibly come to. There was a lot of data, a lot of input put into this, and for your part tonight, you're supposed to set a date for a public hearing, at which time I think we'll follow the new rules, and at some point in time after that public hearing, you'll be able to approve this document. But it has been some time coming. It's almost like the big house issue, but we are now in the final few yards for completion. So you'll need to set a date for a public hearing if you'd like to approve the document.
Would you consider the next meeting for that public hearing?
It actually, in order to meet the advertising guidelines for this one, we have to go a little bit longer, so the earliest we could do it would be December 15th, our December meeting.
Is everybody agreeable with
Yeah.
that? Consensus is, Madam Clerk, go ahead and set that date. And that meeting's gonna be at 5 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that okay, 5 o'clock? All right. Anything else we need to do to address this item on the agenda? You satisfied, Mr. Evans?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna be done with this pretty soon.
All right. We're moving along number 13, if that's all right. And, Ms. Ferguson, I see you got your microphone. You ready to go?
Yes, sir. The town purchased 796 OBW for sound attenuation with the sewer lift station upgrade. It's been vacant since that time, excluding serving as a laydown yard for the contractor, and they've done some plan review in the enclosed area underneath. We were approached by David Wright with the Public Works Department about the possibility of renting that structure. That would place a Public Works employee next door to the lift station. The attached lease that was in the agenda packet is for 6 months with the option of continuing on a monthly basis. And if the board wishes to do so, they would need to approve that. One clarification point, since the time that the agenda packet came out, we did check with the league as far as our insurance goes. And item number 20 on page 38, we would need to make sure that he purchases personal property insurance, so he would initial that. So if you guys decide you want to move forward that, you would need to pass it contingent on him getting renter's insurance.
I have a question, if I may. This potential renter, I understand the department that he works in, does he literally work on the sewer part of our maintenance system?
I understand that is yes, but I'll let the town manager answer.
So it's an advantage to have him nearby where he can actually take care of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
Christie, I mean, have we talked to anybody about the exposure for the town? If, let's say, for example, the house burned down and he died in that house, what kind of exposure for the town from a risk standpoint?
As far as, we just checked with the league on the items that were in, that I just discussed. There is a clause in here that talks about death, but I'll shoot that one to David as well.
We asked the league, currently that facility costs us $1,000 a year for property and liability insurance. And actually having someone to habitate it increases that cost on an annual basis by $300. So the exposure to the town is the exposure to the town as their other facilities expose people.
See, I just want to make sure I heard you that right. You said the exposure for that building would be the same as any other town building if something happened?
Except it costs $300 more a year than it does currently.
Okay.
And the rent rate,
$700 a month plus utilities. And he will have to get insurance.
Christie, when you spoke to League about the insurance, the insurance here is property insurance, and then there's a little bit of an addendum about personal injury insurance. Did they recommend that you have the personal injury insurance as well?
I just have an email from Margaret, and David and Margaret were working on this question, so I don't mean to keep throwing it to him, but those were the two working on that, and I'm going off the email, so he may be better to answer that question.
The league just advised that before we entered into a lease, that they get renter's insurance.
Well, I would suggest that the renter's insurance include personal injury protection, so that if somebody is on that property and gets injured, they'll sue the renter instead of us. And he'll have insurance which will list us as additional insured. If you look at, let me get the page. Personal property insurance, and tenant shall be required to obtain throughout the term of tenancy, renter's insurance. And in addition, additional insured to properly provide landlord evidence of such insurance, in addition to coverage for damage or lost tenant's personal property, an amount as determined by policy shall include coverage for bodily injury and property damage which the tenant may be liable in the amount of, and there's a number to be filled in there. So I think we want that to be included as well, so we're not responsible if somebody visiting him gets injured or their property is damaged.
Do you have a recommended number? $1 million?
I don't know what the, yeah,
$500,000?
I don't know. I don't know what the normal tenant policy is, but I would go with whatever the normal policy is in this area.
I think the issue, I'm not speaking for Mike, but I think the concern he has, and I have too, is that we, as much as possible, create a firewall, so if something happens at that house, that the town is not exposed. And, cause we got deep pockets, and if anybody could sue us, they'd want to sue us if they could, so as much as we can, have a firewall to prevent the town from getting sued if something happens at that house.
Would the commissioners be satisfied if the staff reviewed that with our insurance people or the league and whatever that number is?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I got one other question. This, Tim probably could answer this. Is that house in a rentable condition? Is it safe? Is it? It's been sitting, I mean, it's a carbon monoxide detector, smoke detector's working, electrical safe.
Now that house has carbon monoxide electrical detectors in it, because it probably doesn't have any fuel gas, and it's probably predates that requirement. I've been in the house twice, I've looked at it twice. I would rent it. You know what I mean, I don't know if there's anything in there that, there might be some possibilities for some of the decks and stuff that may need to have a little work done to them, but that's like every house here, you know, have annual maintenance, in fact, nobody's been in it. I do think that, that kind of thing might be something that needs to be done, but other than that, I don't know that, I just don't know.
The
mayor's company built it. So we don't have to ask him all these questions.
Years
The,
ago,
The
years
back-
ago.
The back deck's probably not even tied to the house.
The smoke detector, good operation of the smoke detector is the landlord's responsibility.
I've had a lot of rental property and I know that we are responsible for certain things. I just wanna make sure that that's been looked at.
Well, it's listed under landlord's obligations as well as smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, so it's in the lease. I am sure that the town will make sure that this contract is followed by both parties.
I guess my concern is how much is the town gonna have to spend to bring this thing up to snuff to rent? And we wanna make sure, I mean, for $700 a month, it's not worth a whole lot of risk. That's just my opinion, but.
Is it a family or is it just him?
It's him, and every other weekend he has his son. Or an 8-year-old child who I believe is a boy. Don't hold me to the son part.
I think before we sign the lease with anybody, we need to have somebody look at that house, whether it's Tim or whether it's somebody who inspects houses for a living, and let's make sure the house is livable, because to the point Mr. Murdoch made, for $700 a month, I just don't want to expose the town to a multi-million-dollar loss if something happens.
It's gonna cost $500 to get that house inspected by a home inspector. Round number.
The other thing, guys, what's the long-term use for the house?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be
A rental house.
I mean, if we're gonna, in my opinion, if the town was gonna rent it, they'd rent it as a vacation home in the summertime and make way more money, if that's ultimately what it's gonna be. But what is the long-term goal for the property? Is it,
I tried at the beginning of the year to have that put onto an agenda that we have a discussion about options for the house. And at that point, it was decided it was premature to have that discussion because we still had to go through the lift station and the house wouldn't be open for anything
Yeah.
for at least a year. So we haven't had that discussion yet. Obviously, at some point in time, we would have to have it. This, if it's decided to go forward with this is sort of a bridge until a decision's made, is my only comment. But we will have to have that discussion in future.
This is a 6-month lease. The guy's getting put out of his house that he's in now. We looked at it as a way to bring a few dollars in. Right now, there's nothing going on at that house. We're paying $1,000 a year on the insurance, just to have it there. It was just an attempt, 6 months. You know, we don't know what's gonna happen to the house. It was just an attempt to keep the pump primed a little bit.
Well, I think we all applaud the efforts of trying to get some income for our house while it's sitting there doing nothing. Like I said, my concern is what kind of exposure are we gonna have if the house is not in good livable shape and the back deck falls off and somebody gets killed or something like that. I'm just a little concerned that before we let somebody into that house to live, that we'll at least have an inspection and make sure there's not, you know, the back deck's not gonna fall off next week.
totally agree with that.
There's another concern I have, and I don't know what kind of insurance policy we have, but if it's a non-occupied house, the policy might not be any good.
If it's safe and it's temporary,
Go for it.
yeah, but
But we need to be going where it's safe.
Yes, sir.
you talking about
It's not where, I mean, you're talking $4,200,
$4,200.
and somebody that falls out, and something goes wrong, I mean, who to look for, the big apple. You understand? Always. The lawyer dig down that real quick,
Yes, sir.
you know, so I mean, you know, I can't, I don't see putting the town in a lot of liability for it. It's not worth it, you know, we gotta look after everybody here.
Well, like I said, I mean, and I'm not opposed to spending the money to have it inspected. Cause I mean, we may be able to use it as a rental house next season or something,
Yeah,
but,
but we were gonna rent, but the thing is, if it, and we've yet to have, we've gotta have this conversation
Yeah.
to decide what we're gonna do. But, I mean, if we did decide that we're gonna turn it into a rental, it would be more than, to my thought, it would be a seasonal rental,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
just makes sense.
And like I said, and as Pat said, we're only talking about 6 months.
Yeah.
I'd like to help the employee out, but I'd at least like to have it inspected so we know
We want to know
if
that
there's
it's safe.
something major, we need to stop this. If there's not, let it go. That's a motion.
I don't understand that motion. How would you like us to proceed specifically? Because he's looking for a place to stay. He's gonna go get someplace else, you know? I mean, and that's fine, but just,
The best bet would be if he could find another place. That's my opinion. Not to take anything away from anybody. I mean, I can't see there being a liability issue with the town. For $4,200, it didn't worth it, letting the house sit there and stay empty before we put ourselves at risk of.
Okay, all right, I think we're getting a little out of order here. I need a motion on the table for us to keep discussion. Otherwise, we'll be doing this
Yeah.
all night. If we have a motion and a second, then we can discuss it, and then can vote on it.
Motion,
All right, motion to
Motion,
put it to,
yes,
what is the motion?
that we're gonna have a little discussion here, we're gonna wait and put it at the next meeting. Whatever we do, we don't need to rent it right now until we make a decision here. Okay, in other words, we'll tell you, look, yeah, come on, let's go in, we don't
So the motion is to put it on the agenda next month.
Correct. And hopefully he can write him a place to live between now and then. I'd rather see it go that way.
Okay, all right, you got a motion on the table.
Okay.
Is there a second? All right, hearing no second, is there another motion?
Could, I'll give it a shot.
All right,
I would make a motion that pending the rentor, the potential rentor's continued interest in renting the property, we could have an inspection done to make sure that the house is habitable and reasonably safe prior to entering into any agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. The thing I would like to say to you is, if, once that inspection report is given to the town, somebody's gonna have to evaluate it, and I would encourage you to consider, to ask our,
Can I interject?
Sure.
If the concern is the safety of the individual before he rents the house, and if you're thinking about if the house is safe, allowing him the opportunity to lease the house, why not decide based off of a report that I may give you within the next couple of days on whether the structure is safe or not? My only concern would be the decks, and that would really be all I need to look at. I've been through the house, and I don't know that they're in bad enough shape that it couldn't be occupied, because I really never looked at it from that standpoint. But my suspicion is that this house is safe enough to lease. That's my suspicion. So instead of us hiring an outside individual to inspect this house, just let me go through and look at the house and give a report to the board on the condition of the structure. That could be a report contingent on David looking at it, or contingent on me saying yeah or no, whatever it may be. But if you're thinking about leasing it to them, I wouldn't let a future report from an inspector. If you get a home inspector look at this house, I think there's some disadvantages to that. There's some real advantages having me do it.
would you like to withdraw your motion?
I would.
Is there a second? The person that made the second,
Second.
agreed to the
I
withdrawal.
was under the impression, I'm sorry, that you would be the inspector, not somebody else, not a home inspector.
Okay.
But my thing is I don't think you need, and I probably shouldn't talk, but I don't know that it's important to hold up the lease, because if the report comes back, then you won't be able to go in there until it meets that criteria. But at least you will have agreed to it, if it turns out it's okay.
Okay, I'd like to hear possibly a motion from someone authorizing our
Okay.
inspector to inspect the property, make the determination if and when it's occupiable.
All right, no? Okay. Make a motion that the town inspector inspect the premise to see if it's reasonably safe and habitable, and contingent upon his report, we would approve leasing it to the intended tenant.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, very good.
I have a question. I'm sorry if it's delayed. The motion said contingent on a favorable report, we, the town, would lease. Do you envision that coming back to the board, or in essence, are you delegating administration of that to me?
My intent was if it's found to be habitable and reasonably safe, then you could just approve the lease at that point. We don't have to discuss it again.
Is that the consensus of the board?
Okay, I just want to make
Yes, sir.
sure.
Your decision, sir.
Okay.
You have the insurance end of it too.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, number 14, the police committee.
Okay. Back in June, we had a Board of Commissioners meeting where we decided that we would set up a advisory committee having to do with the hiring of seasonal law enforcement employees. And at that point, because we were thinking that we would want to have those employees in place for the 2021 rental season, we set a date for reporting back to the board of December. Subsequently, we've had a number of meetings of the committee. The board decided to hire 2 full-time police officers to supplement the current amount of police officers on it. Anyway, we are at the point now where we're doing more investigation and committee meetings, and I would ask that we extend the time to make the final report to the full board to March of 2021 rather than December of 2020.
Is that a motion?
Ask the board, make a motion asking the board to extend the time to submit the report to the full board to March of 2021, as opposed to the current date in the task of December of 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I'm on the committee too.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
If we get the report by March, and that says we want to hire some seasonal workers, will it be too late to hire seasonal workers for next year?
That's a difficult question to answer. Too late would be difficult, very, very. But I agree with their request. I think December is too soon. There's a lot more research that, if we make a decision in December, I don't think it's gonna be an educated decision. I think you're better to wait until March and have all the facts before we decide yes or no.
Okay.
Would it create challenges if the answer is yes? It would, but I think those challenges can be overcome.
Well, if we're gonna make a decision, I'd rather it be right, even if it was delayed,
That's right.
than to hurry and make a bad decision and then us wish we hadn't have done what we did.
That's right.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous. Thank you. Number 15, Mr. Tyner.
All right, number 15 and 16 are somewhat related. I'd like to take 15 obviously first. We have had some conversations from time to time about how our legal services that we get today from our lawyer is structured, how those are being provided. The decision on our current provider of legal services was made in October of last year by a previous board. I felt like as we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of the relationship with our current provider, that we may want to take back or step back and discuss, number one, what are we looking for in a provider of legal services to the town? This board hasn't had this conversation publicly, and I think it would be good to have that discussion and say, what are we looking for from a legal services provider? What needs do we have? And then from there, number 16 is to look at our current provider and what we're getting today from our current provider. Does that meet the needs that the board states that they want under number 15? So once again, I know we've had some of these conversations in the past, but we need to publicly have these conversations and make some decisions. So in number 15, I'm asking for the board for some discussion about what are the qualifications, what are our needs from a legal services provider, what are we looking for as this board versus what a previous board might have decided. So if y'all could help me and talk about for a few minutes, what do you think we need And then number 16, we'll use that information to decide about our current arrangements. And do we want to continue our current arrangements, or do we want to go a different direction from a legal services provider? So I hope that's clear. I felt like doing it in a two-stage process would be best. So once again, the purpose of this item, number 15, is to talk about what are we looking for from a legal services provider. So, for example, just get the conversation started. Are we looking for a firm that has all the expertise we need? Are we looking for a firm maybe that has general legal knowledge, and then we might subcontract out if we need different legal expertise? Are we looking for somebody who attends every meeting, or only attends the meetings when we ask them to, if there's something on the agenda? Do we have, do we want somebody who looks at the agenda and opines on whatever's on the agenda? So I just kind of need some feedback on what we're looking for from a legal services provider.
Well, I can chime in if nobody else wants to.
Go ahead.
I've seen the bills, Woody. The travel time, I don't think we're in a whole lot of legal trouble. There are questions from time to time, even one that would come up maybe even on this consideration of a lease of a home down there that could be handled probably with a phone call. I think that an attorney on an as-needed basis would be great. And we have the situation that we were in is that we actually have an attorney that has to go ask another attorney for the answer. And I have personally asked the question of the attorney and, have to wait or never get the answer. So I don't think we need unless we get ourselves in a big jam, I think probably a conservative, knowledgeable local attorney or wherever would be sufficient.
Do we want an attorney relationship where the attorney is at every meeting? Or do we prefer they only be here when we ask them to?
When we request them.
If we have something that's important, that we're gonna ask some questions of an attorney, I think we could call them in, and if it's a business as usual meeting, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
So, I'd just like to comment on that. I mean, I came to board meetings before I was on the board, and from the time I was on the board, we always had a attorney present. And the problem is, you never know when the issue is going to arise. It may seem like it's nothing to discuss, but then you get into the discussion, and it's like, which way should we go? And instead of putting something back another month and asking for it, it helps to have them here. But I agree with you that majority of the time, they're not really necessary, but when they are, it's really helpful to have them sitting here. So the issue, I think, is the cost to have somebody here for each meeting. And if that's a reasonable cost, that's just part of doing business.
So, yeah, the reasonable cost is a key word there, but I mean, we've had an attorney at meetings back, and I know COVID blindsided everybody, but there were questions that we had an attorney here that were not answered.
This may be true, but our previous attorney, that wasn't our experience. So again, I think it does have to do with the attorney that you engage and experience and familiarity with the particularities of Holden Beach, which previous attorney developed quickly and had, and it does take an amount of time. But I agree with Mike that more often than not, it's good to have them here because things can come up that can get clarified quickly. There are times that the town attorney couldn't come, and we avoided certain agenda items, or didn't come to conclusion, waiting for the attorney to be there at the next meeting. So more often than not, I think it's good to have them present. Again, look at the cost of it, at a reasonable cost.
So what I've heard so far, from a criteria, selection criteria, qualifications, service arrangements, we would like an attorney who is experienced and doesn't necessarily have to go to a senior partner in the firm to get feedback and help. We'd rather have somebody who has a little bit more experience at the table. We'd like to also look more closely at the cost, whether it's the cost of when they're actually doing something for us or the cost of when they're sitting at the meeting. We're kind of 50-50 on the attendance, and I think depending upon the cost might help moderate whether we want somebody sitting here or not, whether they are local and can travel in 10 minutes, or they're an hour away and we have to pay for their travel time. But we really, what I've heard last is we really want somebody who's generally knowledgeable, but if we need high-powered lawyers, that we go and subcontract those out. Okay, all right.
Correct.
But
Go ahead.
I would just like to say, in my opinion, what you need as a town is you need an attorney who's familiar with municipal corporations and with land use, because those are the issues that we have here, right? The zoning, the planning, land use, getting the required documents that we need for the Central Reach project. So it's not just an experienced attorney, because you could be experienced in any area of the law, but you want somebody that's a municipal attorney.
Yep. All right. All right, I think that covers that item. All right, thank y'all for the discussion. All right, number 16, can I move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, number 16, we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of the relationship with our current legal firm, the law offices of G. Grady Richardson Jr. Like I said, it's been a year. They were appointed October of last year by the previous board. This board, once again, as is evidenced in number 15, we've had some conversations in the past about what we want from a law firm. The question is, the current relationship we have today, does it match the criteria that we just expanded on or espoused in item number 15? Does the relationship we have today and what we're getting from that law firm match what we're really looking for? And so, based upon previous conversations we've had, I think there's been some concern as we have looked at the invoices. There's some concerns about the amount of money that we are spending on legal services, and I think we've all have indicated we'd like to find a way to reduce the amount of money we're spending on legal services. That some of the charges that we've seen from our current legal firm relate to the distance that they're having to travel just to get here. And also some of the charges are a fact that we're dealing with a less experienced attorney that's here, and that attorney's having to consult with a more experienced attorney, which is doubling our costs. So I think, once again, it's been a year. We've had some conversations about the current legal firm. I think because it's now a year anniversary and talking about what we need, what we really want from a legal firm, we need to make a decision about, do we want to keep the current law firm, or do we want to terminate our relationship with them and then look for somebody who is closer, meets the needs that we have that we just talked about. So I'd like to make a motion that, based upon what y'all have told me in number 15 about what we really like to have in a legal firm, and based upon some of the concerns that we have talked about around cost and that we'd like to try to reduce our cost, I'd like to make a motion that we terminate our relationship with the law offices of G. Grady Richardson Jr.
I second.
Any further discussions,
I-
comments, questions?
I just want to comment that in the fairness to the firm billed us and did exactly what they said they were going to do in the RFP. And we had this discussion, the former board had this discussion about the cost and the potential, and retained them. Nothing's changed. They provided the services, and in the meetings that we had with the firm, Mr. Richardson has indicated that he's willing to discuss changing the travel fee. So I just want everybody to understand that they're open to, considering changing the fee if that's what would keep us, to satisfy our concerns and be able to retain them. So I just wanted to put that out there.
We're gonna establish a new criteria for our needs, and they would have the opportunity to come back in,
Yes,
should they choose to do that, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Do you have anything else, Mr. Tyner?
No, we'll need for, you to sign a letter terminating our relationship with Mr. Richardson's firm.
All right, Mr. Hewitt, and Madam Clerk, if you'll follow up with that, call me and I'll come sign.
Will we then proceed promptly with sending out?
That will be the other thing we need to do, is to ask the town manager to help us identify the criteria, which we discussed in item number 15, to use that criteria in helping us solicit for a new, for new legal services. Do I need to make that as a motion?
The question I had, when you said help us, who are we talking about?
Well, we need, the board,
The board.
Okay,
We need an RFP.
yeah, we need RFP or,
okay. Those are pretty straightforward, and legal services RFPs are pretty straightforward, and I would think that you would have one put out. We can do that fairly easily, and then, as the board would interview or select for interviews, you would refine your criteria, that would be a follow-on thing. You wouldn't,
That's
Okay.
what we did last year.
okay. All right.
Do you
so I
want?
think I just got told to develop an RFP for
Yes.
legal services.
Yes, I'm
Yes, you
sorry, I
did.
thought you understood that,
All right.
yes.
And to go ahead and put it out on the street?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But send the
Would-
letter to the last firm also.
Right. And would you
Send
like,
that out first,
gotcha.
okay?
Would you like that RFP to have a deliverable back in time to go on to review in time for the next agenda?
I think that'll be fine, if you think that's a reasonable period of time.
By the time you advertise it, you'd be cutting it pretty close to get it for the agenda, but we could certainly try. I mean,
Look, we'll give it a shot. If
Okay.
not, it'll be the next week.
All right.
Town manager report.
Yes, sir. You gonna drive this for me?
What are you talking about?
I'm sorry, he's got a budget report here, I thought it was several items, not.
Yeah, it's all one thing. I've got some budget slides. It's the end of the first quarter report. I've included those in your package. Actually, this report is as of the 5th of October. That's what we posted to the website, but for all intents and purposes, it's the end of the first quarter. What I've got is the highlights from the 4 operational funds, and suffice it to say, generally speaking, this is the time of year where we run in the red. And my point there is that we don't take a lot of revenue in, especially over in the general fund, but it exemplifies why you need to have a strong fund balance. Next slide. Specifically, the revenues in the general fund that are collected like a tax, the ad valorem, sewer capital and canal dredging funds, those are goose eggs. We hadn't pulled anything down because we hadn't sent the tax bills out yet, which are going out soon. The major North Carolina distributed revenues are down somewhat. Sales tax is only at 21%, and utilities franchise tax is at 17%. And the utilities franchise tax, as I'm going to venture a guess, is that the governor gave some relief on paying light bills, water bills, that kind of thing. So I anticipate that there will be a bump whenever that catches up. Don't know. Building inspections revenue continues to hold steady at 35%. Granted, again, we're 25% into the budget year. Building inspections is at 35%. What we're seeing, and I've coined this term, is the COVID refugee syndrome. Our water and sewer use charges are up. Of course, we've just been through the season, if you will. And oh, by the way, in the water and sewer fund, we budgeted a normal year with consumption for water and sewer normal. So that 38% is probably about right for this time of year. Occupancy tax is way ahead of what we budgeted. Now that is probably because we only budgeted half of a normal year. We didn't know what we were doing in the beginning, if we were just going to have nothing or we're going to have a normal year. So we pegged it in the middle. So that 150% in looking at compared to last year, it's ahead, but it's not 150% of being ahead from last year. It's ahead. Next slide. The chart here exemplifies, the blue and red exemplifies exactly what I was talking about. And that column on the expenses, it's the actuals plus the encumbered. So the actual is a check's been written for those. And the encumbered is what we have contracted for, what we've promised to pay for. So this is the absolute worst scenario from a cost versus revenues coming in standpoint. What this slide does, it shows your cash position being ahead. And again, we're deficit spending this time of year. The silver lining in this cloud is that whereas the actual plus the encumbered numbers reflect the hit, that delta does not include any interfund transfers or fund balances being used. So for example, in the water and sewer fund that's showing $1.6 million of a deficit there, that's your lift station down there that's being built, but we haven't appropriated the money on the revenue side to show the offset there. So that said, and in a smaller version of it, canal dredging, we're $30,000 in the hole. Well, they're sitting on excess of $2 million in cash. So this is illustrative of exactly why you have strong, solid fund balances, especially going into the first part of the year. Next slide. We post the monthly budget to actual. This report is on the town's website, on the finance page, and you can get it in all 15 pages and 177 line items down to the gnat size, should you be inclined to do that kind of thing. Then that would be my report for tonight.
Any questions of Mr. Hewitt? Hearing none, the mayor's comments.
You know what? I got a 2-page report there. That's just the budget stuff. I got
Sorry,
2
I'm
pages.
trying to get
No,
rid of it
I'm
early.
sorry. I was shuffling papers. I'll be quick, though. I would like to say that Tuesday, the 3rd of November, is voting day. The Emergency Operations Center at 1044 Sabbath Home is a polling site. It is not an early voting site, though. So for everybody out there that's listening in, Public Works has been besieged by people showing up over there and wanting to vote. But please, it's not an early voting site. It's only open on the 3rd of November. The new town hall generator is installed, fueled, inspected. We've received some training, and the status of that generator, it is in service. So now we've just got to practice on it on a regular basis and add it into our emergency preparedness plan actions. This, Fran mentioned the CenturyReach project, CenturyReach 2 or whatever we're going to call it. That application has been made. The CAMA folks have let us know that we're going to have a scoping meeting with them, and that scoping meeting is going to be held this Friday. Folks in the airwaves may not be aware, I've told the board earlier that Hurricane Isaias has had a federal declaration made on it. Our engineered beach estimate is in the neighborhood of, I believe Fran said there were 67,000 cubic yards. That dollar amount there of $5 million, that is represented by a standalone mobilization cost. So we're working on that. Probably just as important is the turkey trap debris muster site. All that's gone. The site has been returned to an was before condition. We just hadn't seen the bill yet. Hurricane Matthew just won't go away. It's been 4 years, and the state's going to come down and inspect some of the improvements that we've made on our closeouts. Lockwood Folly inlet status, the buoys are still an issue. We've engaged twice now with the Corps and also the Coast Guard. And the bottom line on that is the Corps is supposedly developing cost of what it's going to take for a quarterly dredging schedule for the local governments and the state for their amount of contributions. Just so you know, Brunswick County has fronted the money for the most recent upcoming Lockwood Folly merit effort, which is going to happen in November. Y'all included money in the budget just for this one cycle. So if anything's going to happen beyond that, we're going to have to go back and make another appropriation. But we don't know. On the federal advocacy level, Mike McIntyre has changed law firms from Pointer and Sproul to Ward and Smith. We've exercised that change of agent forms accordingly. Everything remains the same, and we're in the process of scheduling virtual Capitol Hill visits for November. That we're still working on that, though. Good news is that the North Carolina Division of Water Resources has made a coastal storm damage mitigation grant notification to us in the amount of $106,000. That's for sand and vegetation to build dunes. Y'all will have a contract coming to you as soon as DWR gets that. So we'll be able to take that money down whenever we execute a contract between the state and the town.
David, did we apply for that grant, or that's what I thought? Thank you.
Christie applied for that grant.
It wasn't just like the state decided to sprinkle it on.
It wasn't a happy plane flying over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lift Station 3, cut-in startup is underway. No issues that I'm aware of at this point in time. We're still anticipating completion ahead of schedule. COVID, we just got our first expense reimbursement, which is almost $40,000 for our initial supplies. You know, these things take months to get the money back for. It continues to impact our operations across all of our town services. We're adapting the best we can. What we will be doing here as a staff is doubling down on our precautions with a seasonal retreat to indoor spaces and society stirring. School's back in. We still got people coming down here. We're going to have more cases. We actually have a emergency management meeting with the county tomorrow to talk about, I believe the governor's is going to make an announcement sometime earlier in the day tomorrow. I think his state of emergency or some of the parameters end this coming Friday, so we'll be coordinating with the county on what the anticipated result of that is. On a personnel note, Scott Cunningham, the number 2 in the Public Works Department, just received his wastewater collection 2 operator certificate. That's always good to have a second guy that can have his name on that $10,000 per incident license that we have to run the sewer system. And on a policy note, I know that I had mentioned it before with COVID and everything else that was going on. Our new personnel policy says that if you've got over 30 days come 1 January, that you have to convert half of the balance that's over that and you lose the half of it. I do not intend to penalize people that have been here basically marooned to their job during this COVID thing. We've been making progress. People are whittling this stuff down. If the board has a problem with that, you need to tell me now, because it's not my intent to penalize people for working hard.
I just want to remind that what we did say last year was, of course, we didn't vote on it until into this year, was once we voted on it, we were thinking what happened before the end of the year. Anybody who got to the end of the year and had more than the 240 however many days, would bank their excess, all of it, in sick leave, which is what the policy was proposing, but that from then on, people could bank half of their unused vacation if they're at the max of hours in sick leave. So we're anticipating people will be able to take half of their vacation during the year. So I just want to remind everybody what we actually did put in place wasn't you can't do anything with hours. You could take half of your hours and put it in sick leave. But again, that was anticipating we were going to vote before the end of last year, and everybody would start this year who had too many hours over the policy. They would bank the extra in sick leave and start this year with their maximum number, and then be trying to take half of their vacation every year.
Okay. What I'm telling you is that didn't play out,
Yeah,
and we're going to whittle it down. I believe that we can get everybody in accordance with the way that the policy's written. It's just that we're gonna need to go past, we're gonna need to go another year. Feedback on the petition for streets paving on Seagull, Deal, and Canal. Those letters went out mid-September with a 5 December return by date. On Seagull, we've got 7 yeses and 1 no. Deal, 4 yeses and 1 no. And Canal is 1 yes. So for the people that may be listening in those areas, I would urge you to get your petitions in so that action can be taken if that's what you desire to have happen. The wholesale water contract with Brunswick County, our water contract with the county has expired this year after 40 years. Brunswick County is, I've been communicating with their engineering services director, and they are developing a draft proposal, looking like that's probably going to be coming forward at the first of the year, and possibly to be effective at the beginning of the fiscal year. We don't have to have one, but I would hate to think that our wholesale water would be subject to something that is every year, it's subject to a different methodology. So that'll be coming forward to the board. We're not alone. We were one of the first few that actually got a wholesale water contract. Ballhead Islands is expired, Oak Island's expired, and then there's a wholesale water contract with ADM also. The development fees revision effort, we've met with the Raftielis team for the House Bill 486 relook on that. We've had our couple of interactions with them, provided them with administrative documents, background and schedule, and it looks like that they are aiming for an early January deliverable to the commissioners. Now, whether or not that will be the final proposal, it's going to be up to y'all. And lastly, information technology. We've changed our cloud provider. Our hosted solution is now been moved back to Wallace from Dallas-Fort Worth, and there are also some new security cameras that have been added in the Bridgeview Park Water Tower in New Town Hall area. That'll improve our security up here, especially at the boat dock. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Yeah. David, could you comment on the adjustment to the town's CRS rating?
I'll kick that to Mr. Evans, because that's been his baby for a number of years now, and he is the most well-versed person that I know about that topic.
I guess it's appropriate at this time. We've received a new rating from the CRS evaluators, which evaluates our resilience under our NFIP ordinance and under the FEMA guidelines for how our town prepares both structurally and physically for storms. We have a reduction of 1 point. When I came here 11 years ago, it seemed like a bridge too far. After 2 or 3 years, we attempted everything that we could, but the town boards, the town staff, there was a lot of input from the community and community leaders, and we implemented changes over the next 7 years that has culminated in a reduction. When I first got here, I think we had a 5%. We shortly went to a 10%, and now this last reduction, we are now entitled to a 15% reduction in our flood insurance premiums. That's quite a bit of money across the island. If it particularly is of interest to those folks, when we had the new flood maps come out, we had 1,400 properties that got better, but we had quite a few that didn't. So they ended up getting a reduction, but those 289 that didn't and those 400 and some that got worse, this is a new plus for them. Once again, it is a milestone. The rules often change. They're hard to tie down, but every person on the island has contributed to this. When you hear people complaining about our flood zone standards and our tougher construction standards, it's those things that primarily drove us into that new percentage for a decrease in the insurance premiums. So yes, staff and the town and the folks, everybody should be very proud of this. It's an accomplishment. It is.
We appreciate all of your hard work and the staff's hard work. Really do. Anything else, Mr. Hewitt? Didn't mean to cut you short, sir. Mayor's report. The island is extremely busy. I don't think I ever remember in October this busy before, this late in the season. Our rentals are continuing to be strong. And the boat dock down here is seemingly being used more than ever before. Sure would like to have some of those boats I see down there. We haven't had any more runaway boats, have we, where the wind storms a long way?
We got the dock fixed too.
Got, okay. I don't have anything else really to add other than it looks like we're going to make it through the hurricane season. Keep our fingers crossed, but I feel certain that we've made it through without another event. So thank everybody for all that you did along those marginal days. We're biting our fingernails as to what was going to happen. So pray for those people down in the Gulf Coast that have had more than their share of activity this year. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you got anything?
Stay safe, wear your mask, and vote.
Mr. Tyner?
Yeah, first of all, most of you know I've been out for about a month or so with some health challenges. I appreciate all the phone calls from the board and the staff, and fortunately, I found some good doctors over at East Carolina, and they took care of me. So once again, I appreciate all y'all checking on me, and tell you what, you just don't know what life brings, man. You're going along strong one day, and the next day you're in the hospital. So I mean, you just don't know. But I appreciate all y'all's thoughts and prayers. Do want to thank the staff, all the hard work. Y'all continue to impress me with all the work you get done. Christie, congratulations on that grant. I mean, it sounds like $106,000 or whatever the number was is not a whole lot of money, but that goes a long way. So congratulations on getting that grant. We appreciate your efforts. That's it.
Mr. Murdoch?
Well, I want to say, Woody, we're glad to have you back sitting up here.
Thank you.
First off, I'm glad everything went well. Thanks to the staff for the continued hard work and facing all the challenges that we still face. One of my biggest concerns and why I'm sitting up here is I want to be a service to the citizens of the town of Holden Beach. And I want to get some input from people of things that they're concerned about, that they want to see on the agenda, or things that they want to improve, or things that they want to have done. So please feel free to contact me with any of that you might have. To the residents of the streets that led me to ask for the petition, please return those petitions as soon as possible. I'm not sure, and I guess, David, you could clarify whether this is a required response or if it's a voluntary thing that they have to do, but please get them back. You have till December the 5th, so return those, yes or no, so we didn't do this for nothing. Everybody stay safe, and we got a good crowd here still, and holiday season approaching, so everybody have a good time.
Mr. Sullivan?
Just echo everybody's sentiment to wear your mask and stay safe. It's pretty crowded down here. It's not like the normal 650 people who live here now. So you want to take care of yourself and just enjoy the good weather we've had for the last month as well.
I actually want to speak a little bit about some efforts that the town is making in advocacy for state level. Nearly 2 years ago, town manager and I looked into how to participate in the North Carolina League of Municipalities advocacy efforts at the state level, and we discovered that there is actually a way that you can enter into the prioritization process for setting advocacy goals. We missed that cycle, so we kept our eyes open for the next cycle. They happen every other year. So last Friday, David and I participated in one of the league's Zoom meetings that was organized to solicit goals from municipalities, and we were directed to focus on goals shared across municipalities, either statewide or regionally. The meeting went into smaller groups. Each municipality put forward proposed goals, why they consider them important, and the town manager and I put forward several goals that were developed from things that have been in the commissioners' discussions over the years, things that, you know, we've been advocating at a federal level. This all fits with the things we've said we need to start doing. We addressed disaster aid, debris pickup in gated communities, not just a coastal issue. We got residents from the mountains. Tax revenue disbursement to small municipalities, and there were again other municipalities that were participating and the league facilitator that, you know, took this upon themselves to say, yes, we've been working on this, something needs to be done. Obviously, disbursement by permanent population for vacation destination municipalities doesn't really work well for, you know, we need to get more to take care of the things we have to do. We raised unfunded mandates and their impact on smaller municipalities. $20,000 for a big municipality for a study doesn't hit nearly as hard as it hits the little ones. That was recognized. We said assistance should be provided. Shoreline maintenance, the beach is a park and for the public, and it deserves financial support. Intercoastal waterway inlet maintenance, the Army Corps increasingly lacks the means to fully manage the work needed across the national system. David proposed that this could be considered within part of the state's transportation department objectives and budget. And finally, federal stimulus aid, a larger share of federal coronavirus assistance, if it happens again, needs to get to the small and medium municipalities. League advocacy goals for the upcoming 2021 session will be finalized in early 2021. There is a prioritization committee. The town manager is a member of that and will review and discuss the objectives from all the meetings and put together a proposal for the league board to consider. That's what that committee will do. David will keep us informed. And thank you, everybody, for listening in, and stay well.
All right, is there anything else that we need to turn our attention to? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Mr. Brown, who made that second? Mr. Murdock, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say no, we are adjourned.